The day my best friend became my worst enemy. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. By the time I realized Marcus had stolen my app idea, he was already on stage accepting applause for it. I was standing at the back of our startup's rented event space, holding a warm plastic cup of cheap Prosecco, watching my best friend walk through my prototype like it had always been his. The slide deck was almost identical to the one still sitting in my Google Drive, down to the blue gradient I'd spent an entire weekend tweaking. The only difference was the name in the corner. Concept lead, Marcus Reed. I'm Alex, 28, software developer at a small tech company in Seattle. I'm not the loudest person in the room, and I've never been the type to demand credit. Growing up, I was the kid who did the group project while everyone else decorated the poster. Marcus was the presenter. Charismatic, charming, magnetic. It always felt fair. He hated the tedious work, I hated the spotlight. That was our balance. But when our boss, Mr. Harris, grabbed the mic and said, "Let's give a hand to Marcus for bringing us this brilliant concept," my stomach dropped. My name never came up. It wasn't their idea or the engineering team's work. It was his. I felt Riley's hand find mine in the dark. "Hey," they whispered, "didn't you show me this exact onboarding flow, like a month ago?" I stared at the screen, the subtle animation on the login button, the accessibility-friendly color palette, even the way the error message shook slightly if you entered the wrong password. I'd done that because I thought the shake would be cute and memorable. Marcus had laughed when I showed him, called it extra, then apparently built an entire presentation around it. People around us were leaning toward each other, murmuring, taking notes. Mr. Harris looked genuinely impressed, and that scared me more than anything. Because if Marcus got this project greenlit as his, the promotion that had quietly been hinted at for me might shift too. Along with my reputation, my future at the company, and honestly, a big piece of my self-worth. Riley squeezed my fingers. "Alex," they said quietly, "are you seeing what I'm seeing right now?" That was the night I realized Marcus might actually destroy me. The first time I met Marcus, he was 12 and furious about a vending machine. We were in middle school, both stuck after class for different detentions. I was there because I'd forgotten to turn in a homework assignment for the third time. He was there because he'd mouthed off to the gym teacher. During the break, the vending machine ate his dollar, and he kicked it so hard the entire thing rattled and spit out 3 bags of chips. He turned and tossed one to me without asking my name. "Finders keepers," he said, grinning. "You look like you needed this more than the machine does." We sat on the hallway floor, sharing the chips, complaining about teachers. Later that week, when some kids started picking on me for always carrying a beat-up laptop everywhere, Marcus stepped between us and said, "If you're going to bully someone for being smarter than you, at least be original about it." They left me alone after that. From then on, we were a set, Alex and Marcus. He dragged me to parties I never would have gone to. I helped him study enough to scrape by. Our families blended over the years. My mom still calls him the loud son, and his grandma used to slip me $20 bills for books and snacks. We built our first startup in his parents' garage, a janky website that auto-generated edgy MySpace intros. Marcus handled the hype, getting our classmates to use it, and I wrote horrible spaghetti code until 3 in the morning. It was stupid and messy and perfect. Fast forward to adulthood, and nothing really changed, at least on the surface. When I landed the job at our current company, Marcus followed a year later, sweeping in with his confidence and vision. I was proud. It felt like we'd hacked the system. Same city, same company, same dream. But a few months ago, at a bar, he'd clinked his glass against mine and joked, "Don't forget who knew you before you were anything, all right?" I laughed, but the words burned a little more than I admitted at the time. I didn't notice his smile never quite reached his eyes anymore. At first, the red flags were small enough to fold into jokes. We'd be at our usual coffee shop, working side by side. I'd show him a new microservice I'd refactored, excited about shaving a few milliseconds off the response time, and he'd grin and say, "God, you're such a code goblin, Alex. I swear, if I didn't drag you into meetings, you'd live in the logs." It sounded affectionate, so I let it slide. When I started seeing Riley, he teased me incessantly. "Look at you, finally touching grass," he'd say, poking my arm. "I was starting to think your soulmate was Postman." Riley laughed at first, but I noticed how they'd go quiet when Marcus kept going, circling back to the joke again and again. Does that bother you? I asked Riley one night, walking back to my apartment. They shrugged, stuffing their hands into their jacket pockets. I don't mind jokes, Riley said carefully. But sometimes it feels like he's trying to remind you you're lucky. Like you accidentally tripped and fell into your own life. I defended him, of course. He's just blunt. That's Marcus. There were other things. If my feature got praised in a stand-up, Marcus would roll his eyes and say, "Relax, it's just a new endpoint," loud enough for the whole team to hear. If I missed a bug, he'd tell the group chat, "Alex is human, everyone. Mark your calendars." I told myself he was just being his sarcastic self, that this was our dynamic, that I'd be overreacting if I read more into it. When you've known someone for 16 years, you learn to file their sharper edges under just how they are. But then, during one lunch, Jenna mentioned how Marcus had described me to a new coworker. "He called you the brains in the basement," she said, half laughing, half apologetic. "Like you're the nerd troll we keep fed so the product ships." It stung, but I brushed it off with a joke. I mean, he's not wrong about the troll part. Back then, I still thought jealousy was something we could joke about. The escalation hit like a glitch you can't reproduce until it ruins a demo. Our company threw a Friday night mixer at a rooftop bar to celebrate the product's beta launch. String lights, rented DJ, everyone pretending their startup wasn't 3 sprints away from imploding. I showed up with Riley, feeling awkward in a button-up that didn't quite fit right, while Marcus floated from group to group like he owned the place. At some point, Mr. Harris clinked his glass and called Marcus and me up front. My heart jumped. I assumed we'd both get recognized for the groundwork we'd laid behind the scenes. "Marcus here, Mr. Harris started, has really stepped up in shaping the product vision and pitch. And Alex, of course, has been the technical backbone. Let's give them a round of applause." Polite clapping. I could live with that. Then Marcus slung an arm around my shoulders and said into the mic, "Yeah, Alex is the wizard behind the curtain. I just translate their gremlin speak into human language." The crowd laughed harder than the joke deserved. "And hey," he added, smirking, "if anything breaks, it was probably Alex's fun experiment again." "That only happened once," I muttered, cheeks burning. "Twice," he corrected, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "But who's counting?" The room buzzed with laughter that felt different this time, less friendly, more pointed. I forced a smile, but inside I felt like someone had pulled the floor a few inches lower. Riley's expression in the crowd was tight, worried. Later that night, I went to refill my drink and overheard 2 marketing guys talking near the bar. "Yeah, Marcus said the dev who built the new onboarding is kinda unstable with deadlines," one of them said. "Brilliant, but, messy." "Alex?" the other asked. They seemed solid to me. Apparently everything has to be double-checked. Marcus basically rescues the pitch from their chaos. I stood there, fingers numb around my glass, realizing they were talking about me like I was some volatile asset. It wasn't just jokes anymore. It had a shape. It had consequences. I slipped back to our table feeling like an imposter in my own life, wondering when my best friend had started narrating me as a problem to solve. The first time he humiliated me in public, I still defended him. After the mixer, tiny fractures started showing everywhere, like spiderweb cracks in a phone screen. Riley wanted to talk about it the next morning over pancakes in my cramped kitchen. That wasn't okay, right?" they said, pushing syrup around their plate instead of eating. "The way he talked about you. The way he talks for you." I shrugged, staring at my coffee. He was drunk. And Mr. Harris did call me the backbone. I'm not upset. "You're not." Riley raised an eyebrow. "Because you looked like you wanted to disappear." Jenna, on the other hand, practically sent a dissertation of neutrality in the group chat. "Jenna, last night was intense LOL. Jenna, but you know how Marcus gets when he's nervous." Jenna, "I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it." When I mentioned the unstable with deadlines rumor, she replied, "Jenna, ouch. Jenna, I mean he did cover for you when you got sick last quarter. Jenna, maybe he's just bad at phrasing." It felt like everyone was gently nudging me toward silence, toward letting it go for the sake of the vibe. Meanwhile, at work, Marcus began looping me out of certain meetings. "No worries, I'll handle this one," he'd say, patting my shoulder. "You've got enough on your plate. I'll summarize later." He rarely did. Riley grew more frustrated as I kept defending him. If a stranger treated you this way, you'd block them, they said, standing by my desk one evening as I packed up. Why does being your childhood best friend earn him infinite excuses? Because he is my childhood best friend, I snapped, harsher than I intended. We've been through everything together. He's not some random coworker. Riley flinched. Okay, I get it. Their voice went quiet. Just don't wait until he takes something you can't get back. The words lodged in my chest like a warning I wasn't ready to hear. I told myself things would smooth out. That Marcus would notice he'd gone too far and pull back. That loyalty meant pushing through the rough patches, not walking away at the first sign of trouble. That night, I started wondering if losing him might actually save me. Suspicion didn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It crept in like a software bug that only appears in production. A week after the rooftop mixer, I stayed late at the office to finish polishing the prototype for what I still thought was our new app feature. The open plan floor was almost empty, hum of AC and the glow of monitors making everything feel unreal. I went to grab something from the kitchen and passed one of the small glass meeting rooms. Marcus was inside, sitting with Mr. Harris, both of them leaning over a laptop. I wouldn't have cared. He had one-on-ones all the time. But then I saw my own UI on the screen. The login flow. The subtle button animation. The exact sequence I'd built. I froze in the hallway. Out of sight, but close enough to hear muffled voices through the half-open door. Really forward-thinking, Mr. Harris was saying. I like how you framed the user retention angle. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, I just kept thinking about how we could streamline things. You know I'm always sketching ideas. Sketching? I'd sent him the Figma link 3 weeks ago with a message. Tell me if this is dumb or brilliant. He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji and LOL extra as hell. Now he was nodding like he'd brainstormed it in the shower. Alex is good with the nuts and bolts, Marcus continued. But they need someone to turn their chaos into a pitchable story. My chest tightened. There it was again, chaos. As if my work was raw material he refined, instead of a complete thought he stripped for parts. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification banner flashed at the top of the locked screen. A new message in the launch planning Slack channel. Marcus's name was in bold. Marcus, I'll send over the finalized deck tonight. I've incorporated everyone's feedback. Everyone's. I hadn't even seen a draft. I backed away from the door, heart pounding in my ears, suddenly hyper-aware of how exposed I was. I knew I should confront him, walk in and say, hey, that's my build. Instead, I slipped into the stairwell, sat on the concrete steps, and stared at my hands shaking. The moment I saw my name missing, something ugly finally clicked. Once you start looking for patterns, it's terrifying how quickly they snap into focus. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and pulled up every chat, email, and shared doc I could think of that involved Marcus and the project. At first, it was just curiosity. Then it turned into an audit. In our DMs, I found the original message where I'd sent him the concept sketch. Me, wild idea for onboarding, don't laugh. Me, makes sign up smoother and lets us test personalization early. He'd replied, Marcus, damn, that's actually sick. Marcus, let's workshop it sometime. We never had that workshop. Instead, he'd booked a strategy session with Mr. Harris 2 days later. I checked his calendar. The invite title? Onboarding Optimization Brainstorm. I wasn't included. I scrolled further back. There were other moments I'd forgotten. The time I'd suggested a new retention dashboard in our team chat, and he'd replied privately, love it, but the execs won't get it if you explain it. Let me package it. The time I'd missed a meeting because of a family emergency, and he'd told everyone, Alex gets anxious in big group settings. I'll speak for them. I'd thanked him back then. I opened Slack threads from months ago and noticed how often he answered questions directed at me before I even saw them. How he framed my contributions as our ideas in public, but as his refinements in one-on-ones. Jenna's words about brains in the basement replayed in my head. I messaged a coworker from design, Sam. Me. Hey, random Q. Me. When you first saw the onboarding concept, how was it framed? Sam replied. Sam. Marcus sent it in DM, said here's a rough idea I've been cooking. Sam. Assumed you two were collabing TBH. Collab implied consent. I'd never given permission for him to present my work solo. My stomach turned as I opened the version history of our shared documents. His name appeared at the top of decks I'd never touched. The timestamps lined up suspiciously well with my late-night commits. Once I lined everything up by date, the pattern stopped looking accidental. The mini twist didn't feel mini from where I was sitting. It felt like a punch. Digging through our shared drive, I found a folder I'd never seen before, pitch_explorations_mr. Inside were multiple slide decks, all themed around seamless onboarding and personalized user journeys. The first one was dated 2 days after I'd sent Marcus my prototype. I opened it, half expecting to see something vaguely related. Instead, I found my entire concept, stripped of my name and wrapped in his words. He'd even taken the little tagline I'd written in Notion: make joining feel less like paperwork and more like a welcome mat. At the end of the deck, there was a slide titled Future Vision with a bullet point. Potential lead: Marcus to head initiative as product owner. I stared at that line until it blurred. This wasn't just him being careless with credit. He'd positioned himself as the face of the project, the visionary behind it, and left me as the anonymous dev in the background. If this got greenlit the way it was, any promotion or recognition tied to the project would go straight to him. Worse, there were comments from Mr. Harris in the margins. Mr. Harris, this is strong, Marcus. Love the initiative. Mr. Harris, would Alex be okay taking more of a supporting role here? A chill ran through me. A supporting role in my own idea. I checked my email and found a thread I'd been strangely excluded from, forwarded to me by accident by an intern who'd meant to CC someone else. In it, Marcus described me as brilliant but intense, and said he'd be happy to shoulder leadership so Alex can stay in their comfort zone. He was building a version of me where I was too fragile, too chaotic, too socially inept to lead anything. Where he was the generous friend stepping in to manage me. My career, my reputation, my future earning potential, all of it quietly tied to whether or not people believed his story. One I hadn't even known was being told. By the time I opened that file, my career was already collateral. I wish I could say I immediately went nuclear, but the truth is, I hesitated. For a few days I moved through life like I was underwater. I still went to stand-ups, still pushed code, still sat with Marcus in the cafeteria while he bragged about big things coming. Every time he said it, I wondered if Riley could hear my teeth grinding from across the room. At night, though, I became methodical. I screenshotted Slack threads, exported email chains, downloaded version histories. I backed everything up to a private folder with the most boring name I could think of, receipts_taxes_2021, just in case he ever got curious about my drive. Riley was the first person I told everything to. We sat on my couch, lights off, TV playing some reality show neither of us were watching. I think he's trying to replace me, I said. My voice shook. Or rewrite me into someone small enough to step over. Riley listened without interrupting, then said softly, "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "If I go to Mr. Harris, it'll blow up the whole team. If I confront Marcus privately, he'll gaslight me until I doubt what I've seen. If I let it go, you'll teach him you're safe to steal from," Riley finished. I winced because it was true. The moral calculus felt impossible. Marcus wasn't just a coworker. He was the kid who defended me in middle school, the teenager who'd driven 3 hours to pick me up from a college party when I panicked, the guy who'd slept on my couch when his dad got sick. How do you drag that person into the light and say, "You're hurting me," without burning your entire shared history? But then I thought about future me, 5 years from now, watching him climb off my work again, still calling me the chaos gremlin, in rooms I wasn't invited to. If you were me, what would you do? Protect the friendship's memory, or protect yourself? If he wanted a game, I decided I would finally play back. The close call came the night Marcus showed up at my apartment with whiskey and nostalgia. I'd been distant all week, answering his messages with one-word replies, avoiding lunch invites, staying busy whenever he swung by my desk. Apparently, he noticed. He knocked on my door around 10, eyebrows raised when I opened it in sweatpants. "Wow, the legend does occasionally step away from their IDE," he said, holding up the bottle. "Got time for your oldest fan?" I should have said no. Instead, muscle memory let him in. We sat at my tiny dining table. He poured generous drinks and started telling old high school stories, laughing loudly, leaning on affection like a weapon. "Remember when I pretended to be your lawyer on that call with the dean?" he said. "I've always had your back, man." "Yeah," I said, fingers tight around my glass. You've always had my back. At some point his tone shifted. Look, he said, dropping the joking facade. I get the sense you're weird with me lately. Did I do something? Because if people are talking, you know they always twist my words. There it was, preemptive damage control. You've been busy, I said carefully. Lots of one-on-ones with Harris. He shrugged, smiling just enough. Someone's got to make sure leadership understands what we're building. You know they don't speak, Alex. I'm just smoothing the way. For us. For us. I repeated. He leaned forward, eyes soft. You're my person, okay? If I get promoted, you get pulled up. That's how this works. Don't start doubting us now. For a moment, the old loyalty tugged hard. I imagined I was overreacting, that the decks and emails were misunderstandings. Marcus had always been good at making me feel like questioning him was betrayal. My phone buzzed on the table. Riley. A preview of their text flashed. Remember, nice words don't erase concrete actions. Please trust yourself. Marcus glanced at the screen, then back at me. Riley, filling your head with drama? He asked lightly. They never really got our dynamic. I realized my shoulders were clenched so tight they hurt. For a second, I almost believed him when he called me family. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I emailed Mr. Harris. Subject, clarification on onboarding ownership. Hi, Harris. I'd like to think about the onboarding concept and roles going forward. Alex. He replied within an hour. Mr. Harris. Sure, let's loop Marcus in and chat together tomorrow at 3 p.m. My stomach twisted, but this was what I'd decided. No more side conversations, no more letting Marcus narrate me alone. If we were going to talk about my future, I wanted everything on the record. I also messaged Jenna. Hey. Me. I think I'm going to talk to Harris about the project. Jenna. Oh, Jenna, with Marcus there? Me, yeah. Jenna, that sounds intense. Jenna, are you sure you want to stir things up? Stir things up. As if my entire career wasn't already being quietly rearranged behind my back. Still, I understood her hesitation. Marcus was magnetic. People orbit him, even when they know he burns. The next day, I rehearsed what I would say in the office bathroom, staring at my own reflection under harsh fluorescent lights. I'd like to clarify contribution credit, I muttered. I'd like to discuss how my idea has been represented. My hands shook, but not enough to stop me from printing out a few key emails and screenshots. Riley texted just before the meeting, proud of you. Facts are on your side, even if he yells. At 2:59 p.m., I walked toward the glass conference room, Marcus already inside, laughing with Mr. Harris. A couple of people glanced up from their desks as I passed. It felt like walking onto a stage I hadn't agreed to perform on. Marcus looked up when I opened the door. There's our wizard, he said, all charm. Ready to talk strategy? Walking into that conference room, I realized there was no safe outcome. If you've never watched someone's mask crack in real time, it's unsettling. We started cordially enough. Mr. Harris asked us to walk through how we got here with the onboarding idea. Marcus jumped in before I could open my mouth. So, I'd been thinking about friction during sign-up for a while, he said, gesturing with practiced ease. I jotted down some notes, shared them with Alex. Actually, I interrupted, voice steadier than I felt. The original prototype came from a build I did on a weekend. I sent it to you, Marcus, on March 3rd. Silence. Marcus blinked, then laughed. We both threw ideas around. I mean, that's how we operate, right? I slid a printout across the table, my message with the Figma link, time-stamped. This is the first version. The language and flow match the deck in your pitch_explorations_mr folder almost exactly. Mr. Harris's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Let me see that. Marcus's eyes flashed, then softened. Alex, come on, he said, tone gentle but warning. You're making this sound more dramatic than it was. I never claimed. I pulled up my laptop and opened the email thread where he'd suggested I take a supporting role because of my supposed anxiety. You framed me as unstable with deadlines, I said, throat tight. As someone who needs you to speak for me. That's not collaboration. That's rewriting me. For the first time, there was no charming comeback ready on his tongue. Is this true? Mr. Harris asked, voice low. Marcus swallowed. I was just trying to protect the project, he said. You know how Alex gets overwhelmed. They even admitted. I never admitted that. I cut in. You told people that. Without asking me. And you've been presenting my work as your refinement for months. He scoffed, anger slipping through. Your work? You think you're the only reason this product exists? I've carried your social weight for years. I've translated your weird ideas into something usable. You'd still be in the basement if it weren't for me. There it was, the truth under all the jokes. I don't deny you've helped, I said quietly. But helping isn't the same as owning. And it definitely isn't the same as sabotaging. I clicked a file on my screen, letting the audio play. A recording from the stairwell where he described me as chaotic but manageable if kept behind the scenes. When I finally pressed play on the recording, Marcus stopped smiling altogether. The fallout was messy, the way real life always is after a reveal. Mr. Harris ended the meeting early, saying he needed time to review everything. Marcus stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Through the transparent wall, I watched him march back to his desk, face flushed, co-workers pretending not to stare. That afternoon, I noticed the tiny shifts. People who usually joked with Marcus kept their distance. A couple of engineers came by my desk to ask clarifying questions about the onboarding code, addressing me directly instead of going through him. Jenna messaged me. Jenna, I heard there was a situation. Me, yeah. Jenna, I don't want to pick sides, I swear. Jenna, but he's saying you blindsided him and made him look like a thief. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Me, did you see the decks? Jenna, no. Me, do you want to? We met after work at our usual bar. I showed her the messages, the version histories, the email where he called me intense and implied I couldn't handle leadership. Watching her read all of it was almost more painful than uncovering it myself. Her face shifted from confusion to discomfort to something like grief. I didn't know, she said finally, voice small. I thought it was just banter. I thought you two were fine. We weren't, I said. He just made sure the story you heard always made him the hero. Over the next week, the friend group fractured. Some people stayed neutral, floating in the group chat without commenting. A couple of Marcus's closest hype men unfollowed me on everything. Riley and Jenna drifted closer, though, checking in, inviting me out even when I said no. At work, Mr. Harris quietly reassigned project ownership. My name on the ticket, my name on the roadmap. He pulled Marcus into a separate track, something more operations-focused. No official demotion, but the message was clear. You'd think I'd feel victorious. Instead, I mostly felt exhausted and hollow, like I'd just finished a marathon I never wanted to run. In the silence afterward, I realized I had won absolutely nothing. Healing was less like a montage and more like debugging an app with no logs. I started seeing a therapist after Riley gently threatened to drag me to the first appointment. In that tiny office with the mismatched chairs, I unpacked 16 years of loyalty, jokes that weren't really jokes, and all the ways I'd shrunk myself so Marcus could feel bigger. We talked about boundaries, how I'd never really had any with him, how that's just how he is had become the excuse for every cut. My therapist asked, what would it look like if you believed you deserved credit without needing his approval? I didn't have an answer at first. At work, I focused on the product itself. Leading meetings was awkward at the beginning. I stuttered, over-explained, second-guessed myself. But people listened. They asked follow-ups. They thanked me. Slowly, my brain started pairing speaking up with being heard instead of being overshadowed. Marcus, meanwhile, became a ghost presence. He was still there, technically, different team, different projects, but we didn't talk. If we ended up in the same room, we acknowledged each other with stiff nods, nothing more. He unfollowed me on social media. I didn't chase him. Jenna never fully chose a side, but she chose honesty. She stopped laughing at his meaner jokes. She started saying, that's not fair, when he slipped into old patterns with other people. Riley told me once, you gave her a different script. What she does with it is her choice. One morning a few months later, I woke up before my alarm. Sunlight was filtering through the blinds. My apartment was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, my first thought wasn't about Marcus, what he was saying, what he was doing, how he might be spinning me somewhere. I made coffee, sat by the window, and opened my laptop, not to gather evidence, but to sketch a new idea. Something small, something just for me. The first morning I woke up peaceful, I almost didn't trust it. I'm telling this story now because I know how easy it is to explain away red flags when they come from someone you love. If you're watching this on YouTube or reading it on some subreddit, maybe you've got your own Marcus, a friend who wraps their control in jokes, who calls you brilliant while quietly convincing everyone else you're a liability. Maybe you've been taught that loyalty means taking the hit again and again until there's nothing left of you that isn't shaped around them. Here's what I learned the hard way. History is not a debt you're obligated to keep paying. You can appreciate what someone did for you at 16 and still refuse to let them sabotage you at 28. You can hold the good memories and still say, "You don't get to talk about me like that anymore." If you're in a situation like mine, document everything. Not because you're planning a dramatic reveal, but because your brain will lie to you to keep the peace. Screenshots, emails, timelines, they're anchors when someone tries to convince you you're crazy. And when you're deciding whether to confront privately or publicly, ask yourself, what outcome protects my future self the most? These days, my life is quieter. My friend group is smaller. I have fewer people at my birthday parties, but the ones who come don't secretly resent me. Riley sends me stupid memes during stand-up. Jenna has learned how to say no without apologizing 15 times, and I've learned that being the brains in the basement was never actually a compliment.